Hey guys, it's Jessica. Today I'm going to be showing you how to chop some more vegetables, and in doing so I'm actually going to create a bit of a salsa. So I figured that'd be an easy way to chop a lot of variety so that you can see how each thing is cut up, but then we can also have a finished product out of it. So to start with, I'm going to cut up our onion. I have already cut this onion in half, and I cut it from stem to root. So you just want to be sure that rather than cut it this way, which might be more comfortable, you're going to cut it this way because it's much easier to dice it this way. Alright, so I cut the root end off already, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the tip off. Now do be sure that you keep your fingers back when you're cutting everything and anything, because that's one thing you don't want to cut off. So then you're going to take the top layer of skin off of the onion, just so that it looks nice and clean. And then we're going to lay it down so that the flat end is down on the cutting board, and I'm going to cut horizontally. Now, I have had some bad experiences cutting my onion horizontally before and cut off actually the tip of my finger. So I have adjusted the way that I cut. So instead of putting my hand on top of the onion like this to stabilize it, I put my entire palm down to do the horizontal cuts. And we're going to do about 2 across. Be sure not to go all the way through the back of the onion. And we're going to do one more. You're going to have to hold it a little bit if they start breaking off the edge like this one did. Alright. And then we're going to go vertically and make slices through. Try to keep the onion together as best you can. And you're going to go all the way through the bottom and the side of the onion, but you're not going to go through the other side. You're going to get as close to that edge as you can without cutting through it. And we're going to go all the way across. And you just want to try to keep these slices as even as possible so that your onion dice at the end is going to be even. It's not quite as important for something like this where we're not cooking it, but if you were to be cooking it afterwards, you want things to cook evenly, and that's really why you want an even cut on things. So then the last bit, we're going to do our actual dice. And for this, you want to make sure that you keep all your fingers rolled back and tucked in so that there's no possibility that you cut it, and you're just going to want to rock the knife backwards. Try to keep your cuts consistent, but if they get a little wonky for something like a salsa, it's not going to be a big deal. Alright, so now once I get to about this point, and I no longer feel comfortable holding on to the onion while I slice it, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chop this individually, and I'll slice it one way, and then I'll just run my knife again through it the opposite direction. That way we still kept that dice pretty consistent throughout the whole thing. Now to put it into the bowl, when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you aren't cutting yourself, so don't run your finger across the knife unless you're doing it against the top of the blade. You just don't want to do it against the blade itself. We'll add all of making a mess, all of our onion into there. This is probably going to be a little too much onion for the salsa, but it's okay. We'll make it work. Alright. One thing I will say is you want to make sure that your cutting board stays as clear as possible, because as you start chopping more things, they're going to start running into each other and you're just going to make a big mess. So if you can keep it clear, I sometimes like to have like a garbage bowl on the table with me just so that I can put things like this, like the rimes of something or ends, off to the side and just keep them out of my. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the peppers. I have already washed these, and be sure to wash all of your vegetables before you start chopping them up. So what we're going to do with peppers is we're going to cut the tops off of them first. And you probably do this with any pepper that you are cooking with. And then we're going to cut it in half long ways. And then we're going to cut it one more time in half long ways. That way we have access to the ribs, which are the white parts that stick up in the middle of the pepper. And we can go ahead and clean those out. So what we're going to want to do is just run the knife parallel to the pepper itself and pull the ribs off. It's super easy. The ribs are really soft, so it's not going to take a lot of force. And the only reason why you want to take those off is because they can be a little bitter. We also want to make sure that we are taking all of the seeds out. Those are normally where the spice is. These are sweet peppers, so you're really not going to run into an issue of them being too spicy. So once we have all of our little slices, I'm going to go ahead and cut them all in half one more time. And then we're going to go ahead and make it into a dice. So I'm going to line them all up and try to keep them as even as possible. And then we're just going to rock the knife through them, keeping our fingers rolled back and tucked in until we get all the way through to the end of the peppers. Just like that. And then I'll throw these into the bowl. And then we're going to repeat that 4 more times for the other pepper. Alright, so now that we've cut up all of our peppers and added those to our bowl of onion, we'll move on to the avocado. Now, for a lot of people our age, avocado has been kind of a trend, so most people already know how to cut one. But I'm just going to go ahead and go over it with you specifically and some tips and tricks on how to do it. So, once I put the knife into it, it'll hit the nut in the middle so it's safe to hold. And what I'm going to do is just rotate the avocado all the way around until we get back to our starting point. Then you can twist the avocado apart. It should be pretty green on the inside. One trick to knowing how green your avocado is that little stem piece, if you can pop that off and that is kind of green, about the color that you would want the inside to be, then you're going to know that you have a pretty ripe avocado. It'll also turn this purpley color. Green is definitely underripe, and this, as long as it's not too mushy, this is when you know that they're a good ripeness. So we have the nut on one side and then no nut on the other. Now, if you were going to only use half your avocado, save the side with the nut in it, cover it with plastic wrap, maybe put some lime juice on it first and put that in the fridge. And by keeping the nut in it, will actually slow down the oxidation, so it'll turn brown a lot slower. We're going to use both sides of the avocado, so the way to remove the nut is you can either hold it or lay it down on the table or a cutting board to do it. And you're just going to gently, but with some kind of force, push the knife into the nut and then rotate. The nut will come loose. And then to get the nut off of the knife, you just pinch your fingers on both sides of the knife and press, and the nut will pop off. So then to slice up the avocado, we're just going to softly push our knife through, but not through the skin, and you'll be able to feel it kind of glide across, but you don't want to puncture the skin because then you can cut yourself. And I'm going to go both ways so that rather than just having sliced avocado, we're actually going to have a diced avocado. So we'll do that, and I'm going to go ahead and do it to both sides. Same thing, and we'll cross over the other way. The biggest thing with this is just not pressing too hard. And then the trick to getting the meat out of the inside of the avocado shell, you're just going to take a spoon and you're going to softly pop the avocado out. And then you'll have the cleaned out shell. This you can just throw away. And we'll do the same thing with the other side. And it's that easy. So the next thing that we're going to work on is the tomato. Alright, so for cutting up the tomato, the first thing we're going to do is cut off the ends. Tomato leaves are actually poisonous, so you're going to want to make sure that you have gotten all your leaf away from whatever you're going to be eating. So we're going to cut the entire end off first, just like that. And sometimes the stem part in the middle is really tough, so you do want to cut down into the tomato far enough that there's not a toughness there anymore. And then we're going to lay the cut side down, and I'm going to basically cut this into the wedges and then trim the wedges from there. So I'm going to first cut it into fourths and then cut it into eighths. And then I'm going to cut it long ways so that now each of these eighths is cut into 3 more pieces. So once you have them all cut into your little groups of 3, then we're just going to cut them back. And this you can just kind of rock your knife and get it into nice bite-sized pieces. Really whatever, like a common pico, you want your tomatoes to be in about that size. We'll do the same with each little grouping. Just cut it into 3, and then really I'm cutting the skin part in half. So that I'll just do 2 slices and then cut this in half. Just with a tomato this big, you just don't want these pieces to be too large in your salsa. So now that we have our tomato all chopped up, we're gonna go ahead and add that to our salsa. Just like that. And get some of that juice in there too. Never have too much. Alright, so and then the last step is going to be with the lime. The first thing you're going to want to do with your lime is roll it. This will open up the pulp a little bit so that it's a lot easier to juice it and make sure that you're getting all of the juice out. You're going to want to make sure that you're not pressing too hard because you can actually crush the lime doing this, which I have done, and it just, juice shoots everywhere. Alright, so then the other trick to it is, unless you're using an actual juicer where the two ends will press together and you'll be able to juice the lime, what you're going to want to do is, instead of cutting it that way, you're going to want to cut it the long way. And by doing this, it's actually a lot easier to get all of the juice out. And we're just going to squeeze as much of this as we can. That shot so far across the room. Alright, and I'm just going to keep rotating it back and forth until I've gotten all the juice out of it. And we're going to do the other side the same way, and I'm just going to keep rotating it. You can also use a spoon if you want to. I just like to do it this way, but you can use a spoon to press in the lime and kind of break up the pulp as well, so that you get as much juice as possible. And you do have to use a lot of force when you're doing this. I'm using all of the muscles. Alright, that's probably good. Alright, so now that you've got all of the ingredients added to the bowl, I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper, just to give it a little seasoning. And if your tomatoes are real sour, you may need a little bit of sugar, just to kind of balance out the salt. But as long as tomatoes are fairly in season, you should be fine. Then we'll just give it a nice little stir. We have a very colorful salsa going on. It's not quite as juicy. I probably would have added more tomatoes if I was making this on my own. So note that for yourself, to add a little bit more tomato in it. But that's pretty much it, and you're good to go. This is great for your tortilla chips or on top of tacos or anything like that.